Hello, boys and girls. Well, it has finally happened. O.J. Simpson, the juice is loose, this mortal coil. That's right, he has passed away, and as a result, we are in a whole new wave of O.J. fever. People learning about his life, his career, the murder trial, and the subsequent fall from grace. Now, I, like everybody else, have been immensely fascinated by O.J. Simpson for quite a while now, which is why I've collected this whole big bunch of OJ memorabilia. I just am immensely fascinated by the story because I think that OJ Simpson experienced some of the very highs and the very lows that a human being can possibly experience. And he did it all by himself. He achieved all that fame, all that glory with his natural talent on the football field. And then in one bloody night, he threw it all away. And even though he got away with it, he didn't really get away with it because he was never the same again, and our perception of him will never be the same again. Now, while we're undergoing this new period of OJ fever, I thought it would be a good time to just show off some of these interesting items that I've acquired. Whether you're an old schooler who remembers him from his NFL days, or if you're like my generation or younger and you only really know him from the murder trial or for being an infamous figure, there'll be something for everybody here. So let's just take a moment, sit back, and enjoy my OJ memorabilia collection. All right, let's start off the collection. Now, most of this stuff is going to come from OJ's football days, which I suppose is not a surprise because that was back when he was famous rather than infamous. But if we've got our little mini museum of OJ here, it is important to remember that, people loved him. He was exceptionally gifted as a football player, still regarded as one of the best running backs of all time. And so most of this stuff is going to come from that era, but not all of it. And we're going to get there as we go. But just to start us off here, I do really like these posters. I have them up here temporarily because I don't really have a good place to put them as of yet. My cat is finding something interesting down there. But I really like the artwork on this one. Like, they really did a good job with how well they painted it. And of course, that's just your standard OJ in action there. Now, we get to some really interesting items right here. This requires a little bit of explanation. So we're going to start with that right back there. That is a sealed figure from Shindana Toys. It's got a lot of accessories and stuff. This right here is a loose version of that same figure. Now, as you can see, it's very similar to a Ken doll, basically. It's constructed very much the same way. It's from the same era, and I think the toy comes from 1974, if I recall. This loose version doesn't have as many accessories as this one does back here. And this right here was a loose figure of that same series that I customized. I got a bunch of little outfits and accessories from a Ken doll. I switched out the shoes myself to try to be as accurate to what his attire on the day in question most likely would have been. And that's a knife from a G.I. Joe, and I'm just like, yeah, look, there was before and after. Isn't that charming? It's fun for the whole family. Just like this is right here. This was a Redbubble sticker that I purchased, and I put it on this little jar of juice here, which I have actually poured orange juice out of this, to just keep it in the spirit of the thing. But yeah, that's nobody else has that in their collection, I guarantee you. And that's unopened. I'm going to keep it unopened just to have the value maintained. Now, going down to the next shelf here, these are a bunch of movies and shows that O.J. Simpson acted in some form or fashion. He was in from the second season onward of this show. It's First and 10, which was an HBO show, kind of a comedy about football. This is a very strange show because it was filmed for HBO, and like it says right down there, contains some nudity in adult situations because it was on HBO, they had a lot of nudity just in here for really no reason other than it was HBO, but they cut it out when the show went into syndication, and that way it could play on normal TV. Um, this particular box set is really not that great. It doesn't have that many of the uncensored episodes, and it's also really not that great of a show to begin with. It might have had a certain appeal for football fans at the time, but like it's a very like dated show. It's very misogynistic, I have to say. But OJ plays I think he plays an assistant coach in this one. This was around the time when his football career had been over and he was just in commercials and stuff like that, or in this case he had been an actor, and this was the character he plays in here is very much based on him, um, and so obviously it was easy for him to play it. This was like actually, what was the year on this one? 92. So it would have been 2 years before the murders, but this is just like your standard. I think this might have been even direct to video action film. Now, it's very amusing to me that OJ, in so many of these movies and shows that he was in, he would always play like a police officer or a detective or something. And it's like, man, then you wait to get to the murders, and that was like the last thing that OJ would have wanted to have associated with himself, considering that the whole case rested on the LAPD is corrupt, and then there he is on the side of the law in virtually every movie that he's in. But this is like your standard direct-to-video action fare. This one's not bad, actually. This is Detour to Terror. It's this movie where he's like plays a bus driver going across the desert, and it has some very amusing moments relative to what would later happen in his personal history, but it's not that bad of a movie. Haven't watched this yet, but this is Sacha Baron Cohen's series where he tries to get OJ to confess, because OJ is himself. He's being interviewed by Sacha Baron Cohen in character, and he tries to get him to confess, and he just won't. But haven't watched this yet. I look forward to it. Now, this is Capricorn 1. This movie is very of its time. It was from the 70s, and it basically makes a whole dramatization out of the moon landing because it was the 70s and government conspiracy movies were very much in. And, it was just it has some good moments. It has a good climax. But it's not an amazing film. Now, this is weird. I didn't notice this until now. That's that actor right there. I can't remember his name, and he's the second picture. That's not actually from this movie, if I recall. That's from a different OJ movie that we're gonna get to later. But yeah, Capricorn 1. This is one of his earlier film roles. One that more people would have seen. The Cassandra Crossing is one that he was in, where he plays this undercover, I think, CIA agent, and this one is also very of its time because it's 70s. It's a disaster movie about a pandemic, oddly enough. It was very strange to watch that in a post pandemic world. And this one is Firepower. You see how often he acted alongside really notable Hollywood actors? Like, he acted alongside big names. I mean, Sophia Loren twice, and James Coburn here. This movie's really not very good. It's very forgettable. It's very jumbled in its structure. It's overly long. Don't recommend. Killer Elite is a little better. That's where that still comes from. I don't know why they mixed it up on the Capricorn 1 package there, but this one's an interesting one as far as diamond smuggler. It's about diamond smugglers in North Africa, and OJ plays one of the thieves. Oh boy, here we go. This is a good one. Or I say that very ironically. This is The Klansman, and this movie is awful. Like, it's so horrible, but it was one of OJ's first acting roles, and he plays this guy who shoots up a bunch of Klansmen, and it's like, wow, this is just surreal. It's Terrence Young who directed a good chunk of the early James Bond films. And Richard Burton gives like the most drunk performance I've ever seen from him. And he was a heavy drinker. Now, of course, this is what most of us who know OJ in movies, this is where most of us know him from, which is the Naked Gun trilogy. That's where I first came to know him, actually, because I grew up, well, particularly with the first movie, I grew up with that as a kid, and I remembered him as Nordberg. And this still, I would say, is the first Naked Gun is still his best role, and it's the one that people can still go back and watch these movies and laugh in spite of all of the future events that would come. And it might have soured it for a lot of people, but I think Nordberg has largely held up in ways that other things associated with OJ haven't necessarily. Most people haven't seen any of these, but most people have seen at least the first Naked Gun. Not starring OJ, but certainly about OJ. This is the People versus OJ Simpson American Crime Story. This Blu-ray is pretty rare now, but if you haven't watched this miniseries, you really do owe it to yourself to watch it. It's absolutely fantastic. 22 Emmy Award nominations. It's worth all the praise that it gets. Now, it is a dramatization. It's not a documentary, but it actually talks about things that this documentary does not talk about. So it's well worth watching on its own. It's a good entry point into the case and why it was so monumental, why I'm even talking about OJ, to be honest, because, it wasn't just that, he killed two people and got away with it. There was a lot more to it than that, about race, about the state of LA post Rodney King. There's so many amazing angles that this miniseries explores. It's well worth watching. And lo and behold, OJ actually had a small role in the first episode of Roots, if you can believe it, which is very ironic considering that OJ was the person who infamously said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ," and yet he's in one of the seminal African American Experience miniseries, which highly recommend this. It's worth all the praise that it gets. But he plays the father of a person in their village, and of course they show him running because, oh, how cute. That's what he was known for at the time. This is probably the most high profile and quote unquote, best regarded movie that OJ was ever in. He plays a security guard in The Towering Inferno. This was a Best Picture nominee and had a star-studded cast. And spoiler alert, he's one of the few people in the movie who lives, which is very ironic now. And this right here is the crown jewel. This is OJ Made in America. I am not exaggerating when I say that this is the best documentary I think I've ever seen about any subject. It is so incredible. It's like almost 10 hours long, but I promise you, you will wish it was longer. It's that engaging because it compares and contrasts OJ's rise to fame and his largely his denial of race, wanting to be seen only as OJ, as not black or anything like that. And then meanwhile, the black community in Los Angeles over the decades was just getting worse and worse, with more injustices committed against them by the LAPD that went unrectified, which there's a lot of buildup to the actual trial, but it's necessary to understand why the trial went the way it did. Now, obviously, you would have to strain credulity pretty far to come to the conclusion that OJ didn't do it, but that isn't really what it's about. It's about the fact that his story it's exactly what it says, made in America. The good and the bad, the rise to fame and the fall, it's all very unique to America, as was the fact that when he rose up, that much of the black community was not doing well, and he didn't do anything to lift them up. He largely abandoned them until he had no choice after he got off, and white society largely cast him aside. You really owe it to yourself to watch this. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. It is long, but it's trending on Netflix right now for a reason. Now we come down here. I'm very proud to have this. This is a signed piece that I have a little slip of paper here, and there's a little verification sticker right there. But this was actually signed while the trial was going on, and I'll get to the little slip of paper in a bit. But I felt like that was an important little piece of history. I got that before OJ's death, and I felt like that would, that's kind of how he wishes that we all remembered him rather than how we actually remember him. But this was like the last of the good old days, you know what I mean? And then just recently, I got this piece. This is another signed piece that's from his college days at USC. Um, if you're looking on eBay right now, most of the memorabilia has gone up in price, obviously, because people are wanting to get their last little taste of fame or infamy. But anything related to the trial, because they actually did do autographed stills from the trial, if you can believe it, and they funneled the money back into the defense, as bad taste as that was. Those pieces are going for ridiculous amounts, as you might imagine. I would love to get my hands on one of those someday, just because, well, it is a part of history. You know, this whole thing is a part of history, a part of American history. And one key component of that is this piece right here. This I got at a comic book convention, and this was made from a lot of the Marvel comics that were illustrated that OJ would appear in, because, again, keep in mind, back in the 70s, he was an icon. People loved him. He had a very clean, wholesome image and was an icon for many, many people. And that's what this documentary, like I said, what it goes into, and that helps to explain a little bit of why the fall from grace was such a massive one. Unlike that of any celebrity really before or since. Um, Now, these right here, this is not all of the books that were written about the case. I have a good chunk of the major ones, but I don't have every single book. I mean, you could really spend your whole life collecting this stuff because there's just so much out there. But these are most of the major books that were written. I have not read all of them yet, but they are on my list to read. So I'll just start one by one. This one I have read. This is without a doubt. It's Marcia Clark's book. You know, out of all the people on the defense, I sympathize the most with Marcia Clark because, man, she fought hard to get justice, you know, for Ron and Nicole. She tried her best. She fought hard. There were a lot of mistakes made along the way in the prosecution's case. They got cocky. They thought they had a slam dunk, and obviously they bungled some things along the way. But Marcia Clark, despite her mercurial temper, I mean, she fought hard, and I commend her for that. But she was easily my favorite of the defense because she's very funny. She's a no BS kind of person. She doesn't hold back, and she's a fighter, and I really like that. But that's a good book to read. I actually have an extra copy of it. I bought it accidentally. I didn't realize I already had it. There's Johnny Cochran's book right there. I have not read this yet, but it's definitely on my list. Now, one thing that the miniseries goes into great detail about is exactly why Johnny was so dedicated to this cause, you know, because the media commonly portrayed him as a showboater and someone who was willing to distort the truth for his own gain, that's true. That's an accurate assessment, but you also get to see all of the injustices that he did suffer in his youth and all the passionate service that he put into the Black community, such that he could defend OJ and use him as as they put it, as the imperfect vessel for his cause. You know, so the miniseries in particular does a good job of humanizing him on that level, but nonetheless, you know, facts are facts. I mean, he got a guilty man off, and but this is his book. I still got to read it. I think it would be an illuminating read. This is Madam Foreman, A Rush to Judgment. This is another one I still got to read. Once I read these, I should do an update video on these about, just some of the perspectives that are offered here. Like I said, I don't have all of them yet, but I'm working on it. Same with this one here. This is Christopher Darden's book, In Contempt. Um, just like Marcia, I mean, he fought hard. He tried his best, but couldn't ultimately win that slam dunk case that they were so convinced that they had. And if it had been any other time and place, I think that OJ would have been found guilty pretty instantly. But this is Alan Dershowitz's book, Reasonable Doubts. And again, still got to read that one. Now, this one I reread recently, is How I Helped OJ Get Away with Murder, and this was by Mike Gilbert, who was his agent for such a long time. This one is a very interesting book because it makes a lot of claims that other books don't. And I have to say, besides OJ himself, Mike Gilbert is the only person that I have ever seen say an unkind word about Nicole. It was really quite astounding. Like, I was shocked as I read it, and I thought he was kind of a slimy little toad, to be honest, because he stuck in OJ's orbit for so long when he really shouldn't have. And this book might make you angry with just how much he let OJ get away with besides the murders and stuff. I mean, he stuck around with him afterward, but it's a good read as insofar as it illuminates a part of the story that the other books will not tell you about. This is another one I still got to read, is Cato Kalin's book. Talk about someone whose career basically got made by the trial. Like, nobody would ever hear of him had it not been for the trial, but he's a well-known name even to this day. It's amazing. Yeah, the trial made a lot of stars out of a lot of people. And this is... I haven't read this one yet. This looks like, just based on what I'm seeing here, this looks like one of those, alternate suspect books, which are usually complete crap. One book that I have read that I don't have in the collection yet is OJ is Innocent and I Can Prove It by William Deere. And that book is really like conspiracy-ish and really just nonsensical. But this looks like it's one of those things. But I have read this book. This is Mark Furman's book, Murder in Brentwood. And this is an interesting book because the whole preamble of this book, he tries to justify him having pled the Fifth. And he tries to downplay all of his humongous racism and his misogyny. And he tries to present himself as just an honest cop who was wronged by, Johnny Cochran and everybody like that. But, I mean, yeah, OJ did it and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, Mark Furman was a really not good person. I mean, I think he allegedly was a good detective. But, as far as harboring really racist attitudes, they did bring that to the forefront, unquestionably. The defense did. And this is the book that the Goldman family put out about Ron because they kept feeling like his memory kept getting overshadowed by Nicole and by the scandalous nature of the whole thing, which, fair enough. And they were the ones who ultimately beat OJ in the civil suit, and they made it to where he really never had a moment's peace, for the rest of his life, because they were always breathing down his neck every time he was trying to make money. This was Faye Resnick's infamous book that came out as the trial was in its early days, and it made it to where finding unbiased jurors was going to be difficult, which the miniseries goes into detail about. And this one I know is a very scandalous, salacious book, and I need to read it again for myself, but I think many of the details have been called into question about it, but she was kind of a scandal monger in her own right. And then this is another, see what I mean? Like, there's so many books that have been written about the case. Like, it became a cottage industry at one point. This is a recent addition to the collection. I had actually filmed this video for my Instagram, and it was only 8 minutes, but I wanted to go into more detail here. This was not in that video when I shot it, because this was a glaring omission from my collection for such a long time, but every person who's interested in the case needs to read this. This is If I Did It. It was a book that OJ had ghost written because he thought that he could get some easy money for his kids by talking about the one thing that people wanted to hear from him on, which was the trial. And what happened was that the book was axed by Roger Murdoch because it was going to go through HarperCollins because the Goldmans actually sued and they won the rights to the book. They put it out themselves and they gave it this cover. They put "if" right there. They put "if" in very small print, and that to where it looks like it says "I did it," and they put "Confessions of the Killer," and then they wrote a whole intro piece. But the rest of the manuscript is exactly what OJ had written or had ghost written previously, and it's an essential part of the story because it's about as close to a confession as we will ever get. Now, again, it's from OJ's perspective, so he tries to make himself look a lot better than he really was. He completely does not go into detail about his spousal abuse. He actually vehemently denies many of those things, and it is very telling that somebody takes more issue with being known as an abuser than they do necessarily as a killer. And again, that just tells you a lot about his psychology and the fact that, yeah, he really did do it. Now, this is the book I want to tell you that was put out while the trial was going on, and this was, again, a fundraising effort and to try to keep his good name in the public eye, because that's honestly what OJ was the most concerned about out of anything, was that, his reputation, his name would be tarnished because, he's obviously very narcissistic. And, so that's what he was most concerned with, was trying to win the public back. And he never really did, even with this book. Now, if you're going to read one book about the case, this is probably the one you want to read. It's The Run of His Life, The People vs. O.J. Simpson by Jeffrey Toobin. And this is the book that the FX miniseries was based on. It's a good comprehensive account of the case. I don't love it, though, I have to say, because there are some characterizations that he makes that I don't agree with. Like, he goes way too hard on Marcia Clark. He goes way too easy on Lance Ito. And he portrays OJ as having been largely passive in his defense and even being semi-literate. But I've seen accounts that run contrary to that, like the documentary series up there says that OJ was actually quite involved in his own defense, like very involved. And so I don't agree with a lot of his takes, but as far as just an overview of the case, if you're totally new to it, that would be a good one to read. And then this is a recent addition too. It's Raging Heart. This is another one I got to read. See, I'm really behind in my reading, and there are other books that I need to get. Like, there's a book about the Las Vegas crime that OJ actually went to jail for. Got acquitted in the murder trial, but he actually served time for the Las Vegas robbery. I got to get that book. There's a whole bunch more, but this is just a little taste of it. But as you can see, there's room here for expansion. Now, what's all this? Well, this is a little morbid here, but I already had this on hand. It's for my little, I don't know, it's like a museum piece, but like, we don't actually know what the knife looked like, so I had that already and I just put it there. But we don't know what it looked like. They never actually found the murder weapon, but they did find gloves, and I bought my own pair of OJ gloves, basically. And I did it because, there you go, look at that, see, it's a snug fit, and that's on purpose, because the whole idea with the gloves not fitting was that they were a tight fit anyway, and they had been frozen and thawed out many times, and they were wet with blood, and that's why the glove didn't fit, plus the fact that OJ was wearing latex gloves, and he didn't want it to work, and so thus it didn't work. And that's why you had the famous, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And then I have my own black cap, which had OJ's hair on it, but I have my own little recreation of it right there. And then right here, I have a replica jersey. This is unsigned, but there are signed ones on eBay. But I did not get one because I wanted to be able to wear this theoretically if I ever needed to for a future video or something like that. But nope, that is a replica 32 jersey for the Buffalo Bills. And I'll show you the other side here. There it is. And I'm sure that there are a lot of old schoolers out there who do remember him from those days that probably still do, or at least they want to. And they want to remember those days. I don't have a good display option for that yet, but I'm working on it. Now, this right here is going to be really cool. I just got this today, but this is a binder full of some of the advertisements that OJ appeared in. Because, yeah, OJ, after football, was known largely as either an actor or as starring in commercials, and he promoted a lot of products. I put these in rough chronological order. This right here is very important to me, actually, because my family and I would go to antique stores, and I would get a lot of the 70s and 80s Marvel comics, and I remembered seeing this ad in one of the comics that I got. So this, and again, I didn't know who he was at that time, but this has a lot of nostalgic value for me personally, because that was an early exposure I had to him. And if you look on the opposite side right here, this was not the issue that I saw, but it was of this same era right here. But yeah, there you go. You would get your Marvel comic there back in the day, and they would have these illustrated ads. And again, you know, there was no reason to think so infamously of OJ at the time, but obviously now all of these are very amusing or interesting in retrospect. Same with this one here. This is for Dingo Boots, and what's that right there? As you can see there, it's you know, they got that from this ad here, one like it. But yeah, these were all illustrated. This is back in the days when advertisements were illustrated. And look at that. There's an ad for Star Trek model kits. That's pretty cool. See, these are interesting as far as the ads that feature OJ, but also the other ads that are in here. He did a lot of work with Dingo Boots here. And these ads always freaked me out because it looks like he's got 3 legs. It's like he's a mutant or something. And he did a bunch of them, as you can see. I think that it's meant to show... I think it's meant to give the illusion of motion, I think. But it just looks bizarre, doesn't it? He looks like a mutant. But yeah, there's a bunch of these. And again, I don't have every ad that he ever did, but... you know, I just find these on eBay and I put them in the collection here. If I played baseball, I'd wear spot-built spikes. It's another little ad right there. This, as most people know, OJ, his big brand that he worked with was Hertz. And there is a television version of this same campaign here. You see, he's flying instead of running like he did in most of the commercials. And the date on this print ad is from 1981, so this was intended to not so subtly reference Superman 2, which would have been a big box office hit at the time. Now, for those of you who have seen other videos on my channel, you know that I did a full read-through of this book. This was the White Rabbits Can't Jump book, where he had a guest role in Adventures in Wonderland. That episode was filmed, but it was never aired because of the murders, obviously. And so this book is very rare. It was $100 on eBay, and I think the prices have only gone up since then. But if you want to see a full read-through of this book, check out the video on my channel. And this is an interesting one. This is He Said, She Said Comics, and they were a small publication from First Amendment, whatever that says, First Amendment Publishing. And, they were a small comics company that tried to capitalize on a lot of true crime and a lot of infamous people and cases, I guess ones that involved a man and a woman. And this came out at a time when nobody knew any details about the case. So this was during that small window of opportunity where you could have possibly thought that, that the defense had more of a case than it did. Um, Besides having to just undergo conspiracies and what if stories of corrupt police corruption and stuff that Johnny Cochran pursued. But yeah, it's a reversible cover, and it shows off things from Nicole's perspective, and it shows off things from OJ's perspective as it was known at the time. As you can see, it's very obviously crude artwork. Very little of it is in color. A lot of indie comics were like that. It might be interesting to do a full read through of this, but yeah, see right there, it's got like I think Woody Allen's one of them. Uh, Sex Maniacs, the original. See, this is what was great about indie comics back in the 90s, and look at that. There's a full 2-page spread of the mugshot there. Look at that. But this is quite the collectible piece. It's just very amusing to see them try to present the story from OJ's perspective and make it look like, he might have been framed or whatever. Because again, nobody knew much at the time. But, if you actually read the details of the case, the defense's case was just so flimsy. But everyone kind of knows that on some level. But in case you don't, again, you got your watching material up there. Now, that right there is the infamous Time magazine cover, the one that made his face look much darker than it actually was, as opposed to the Newsweek magazine, which used the unaltered mugshot photo. But generally speaking, Time magazine has some of the best covers you'll ever see for any magazine, but that was a notable point of controversy right there. But yeah, these are all really important for, it's a little history here. This is, like it or not, this is all American history, and it's important to archive this stuff, at least I think so. Now, this is a People magazine. I try to put these in rough chronological order, but that's a People magazine right there. That's another People magazine, the OJ Nobody Knew. There's probably 10 billion tabloids that have his face on it, or weekly magazines. I just have a few. I'll get more eventually. And then that, of course, is the Acquittal Time magazine cover right there. And then coming toward the end here, this is the card that was sent to me when I bought the White Rabbits Can't Jump book, and I thought this was so funny. What an odd item. Understatement of the century. And then that right there is the little, that plus the sticker, but that's the little authentication piece that says that, I got it while the trial was going on. But yeah, look at all this stuff. All right, guys. Well, that was the collection. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting or strange, weird, wacky, funny, disturbing, any of those things. I just wanted to share this stuff because, well, I find it interesting, and maybe you will as well. Now, stay tuned. There's going to be a video coming up soon where I do a full apartment tour and I show off all the new artwork I got, just how much things have changed around here, and just give you a little taste of what's to come with this channel. So stay tuned for that, and thank you again for watching.